Very live.
All right, it is 4 p.m. We will call the Committee on Public Safety to order. Please note that all members are present for today's meeting. If I could have a motion to approve the August 26 minutes.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are accepted as written. Next, we are on to public comment on agenda items. Do we have any members of the public present that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on then to our discussion action item B, committee budget priorities for fiscal year 2026, 2027. We do have a list of the adopted Committee on Public Safety priorities for this past year for, yes, 2025, 2026. So as was mentioned at our most recent council meeting yesterday evening, we're bringing these forward to start the discussions on, where our priorities may lie for this coming budget season. Certainly we can submit some priorities from the Committee on Public Safety. So I'm open to hearing any suggestions that committee members may have. We do have a copy of the transmittal letter from the mayor's office from earlier this year on everything that had been incorporated into the current budget. So I'm open to hearing any suggestions that this committee may have.
Yeah. So I think a couple things. I think we can knock two off of there.
Mm-hmm.
They have reinstated the apprenticeship program. And
they had actually reinstated prior to us actually submitting these.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did is they sustained funding. That's just so.
And then the request for the zoning personnel staff for administrative tasks relating to commercial corridor specialists. It looks like ED&P had said that they wanted a new premise officer rather than that to better serve the community. So in my opinion, I think 3 could be changed to perhaps another commercial corridor inspector. This was a topic that I had brought up previously. When we look at our commercial corridors, MLK, Grand River, Michigan Avenue, which is, being redone at this point, but there's still, serious deterioration with signs, which we changed the ordinance on 2 years ago, deterioration of these buildings, vacancy with destruction upon those buildings. So I think that maybe Zach could use some help.
And thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Cost. We were, this conversation has come up on the commercial corridors. And actually, I'm glad that it's part of this discussion. I was going to ask our EDP director, Van Fossen, because it has been brought up several times. And most recently, this past weekend, President Cost and I were discussing a commercial corridor on the north end of town, northwest. The looks of it, a bit run down, like he said, signs, some trash, debris, just not a great look. So for our next up, I don't expect you to have that information right now today because I'm springing this on you a bit, but if we could have a report on the commercial corridor, if there has been enforcement recently or how frequently that may happen throughout the city.
All corridors or that north end specific?
I'd be interested in all corridors, just to understand, how that work is being conducted, how often we're able to put attention there.
Sure.
I think that would be of interest to us, certainly, but helpful to know.
Absolutely. What I can just say now, based on the discussion I've heard from the both of you thus far, is I was not here present at the city when the commercial corridor specialist position was originally created. We've had some back and forth discussions with the current staff member and the team they're on of the intent of that position to be, was it intended to be more so enforcement, or is it intended to be similar to the work you see LADC doing in terms of business recruitment and so forth? So we have been going back and forth with the JDQ that was published back then to try and clarify that a bit more. I am more than happy to always get more enforcement staff in the budget from council. I will say though, in my short year and a half or so and looking in the future, it will help the department if we're vague in assigning that to a code officer who can do commercial corridor versus creating just a commercial corridor position that may lock us into something in the future. So for the example is all code officers can enforce in the commercial areas. That was a past practice that the department has since stopped as of a year and a half ago. There used to be an internal debate between building safety and code enforcement of who could do what. And we have since covered that and made clear that code officers and premise can do enforcements on commercial properties in the corridor. Certainly Zach Driver has taken lead on some of the corridors as it relates to zoning enforcement. But I'd be happy to have an expanded discussion on that. I just think back to when we created this position last year, part of my ask for it to be a premise is because then I can have a premise officer that gets assigned a certain area, for example, a commercial corridor, versus having a job description that limits them just to those corridors. Could present issues with their union, could present issues with the employee themselves. It's the only feedback I would offer, take into consideration now.
Any comment or question?
Yeah, so the genesis of the position starts with me, just so you know. And so the reason why the position exists is because I was complaining about the condition of our commercial corridors. And working with staff at that time, obviously there's been a ton of transiency, it was their opinion that their folks were being pulled out far too much onto the commercial corridors to deal with things. Because of that, things such as rental inspections were falling by the wayside. Things like premise issues was falling by the wayside. And so everybody determined, administration included, that it made a lot of sense to have somebody that could specifically enforce on the corridors. We have a LADC. They do great work, but this was supposed to be about, so we had all this carrot, this was supposed to be the stick piece. So it was supposed to be enforcement. So to hear what you just said, I'm a little concerned because we're talking about the need for more code, more premise. We know what the issues are with our housing stock. We know what the issues are in terms of rentals. We know what the issues are in terms of premise in our neighborhoods. It's not like we have all those issues buttoned up.
Sure.
And so I would agree. I think we need additional enforcement out of corridors. Of course, you are the expert in this area, but whatever we think that might be, because I'm articulating to you that the condition of the corridors and the condition of our neighborhoods right now is not okay.
Sure.
So yeah, I would love to continue the conversation. I don't know what that looks like, but they were all in on this idea of commercial corridor enforcement, and then eventually, right over time, as we learned more about the actual role of I would say the role, capacity of the individual,
right.
Capacity of the shop, in general, how that looks in terms of growing it over time.
I don't disagree. I'm certainly using
Okay.
things that were put in place through JDQ process that I wasn't here for.
Right.
Again, one or the other, not only was there a disagreement of who can enforce commercial properties when I came in,
Right.
disagreement on who could do zoning enforcements. And so there was a past practice that all zoning enforcements had to go through the zoning administrator. That's an impossible feat for one person to do all when a majority of all code enforcement issues written are based on our zoning ordinance.
Right.
And all code officers and premise officers per their job description are required to be certified in zoning by the International Property Maintenance Code. So the foundation's there, just the practice of doing that. So that's another practice that we've changed, is that every code officer and premise officer can now and should be writing enforcements, letters, tickets, et cetera, under our zoning ordinance, when previous all of that was being deferred to Sue to write those letters. And so I certainly agree that there's both issues in the neighborhood and our corridors that need more attention and love. I say in terms of when creating positions, if we lock them into something specific, in turn, if there's a year in the future where we want to, if there's a residential thing right off the corridor, can that officer, that corridor person write that? Or does that go against their job description versus calling it a code officer that then gets assigned a zone that is corridors only, if that makes sense?
So
I
if,
don't know that comes up often, but what I've learned in my short year and a half, there are some personnel things and people look very closely to their JDQ in terms of what they're allowed and not allowed to do.
if I may, and I, just from hearing this conversation, I feel like we're very close and we're all looking toward the same outcome here. I think when you're talking about, what does that look like? What does that position look like? I understand having a flexible position description that is out there. You can have maybe I don't know if this is the right word, specialty or a specific focus for that. So, in state government, an analyst versus an analyst is not always the same thing, but it's the same type of position description that is put out there with maybe a specialized focus. So there can be some flexibility there to not lock you into only that work. Excuse me, but the intent of that position.
Can I give maybe a more real-time example? I'll pick on my job a little bit with Walter French Apartments. So that's on a corridor. And so if there's now that they've have their rental license issued, if there's an exterior violation or a sign issue with their or a bus stop or trash accumulation, I fall into this bucket of, is that a commercial corridor violation that Zach now takes and writes? Or does that fall back onto the code officer assigned to that overall district? So that's where I totally agree with the intent of it.
Or is it both? And
Or is it both?
And is there, are we not talking? Are we not communicating? Are we not?
I think there is that,
Okay.
but I'm also trying to plan for the future of if those jobs.
No, and I get it. I just
It's in and
struggle a little bit at everything. Okay.
I don't want to be,
I don't operate in the same world as some of you all operate. So it blows my mind that we have to split hairs like that. I mean, but okay.
I understand is
I just want to get the work done. I mean, I would hope everybody within our shops just wants to get the work done.
I don't
So
disagree.
there's an ability within the job description, and if there's an ability within our certifications, things of that nature, to make sure that we are tackling work, sometimes collaboratively. That's called teamwork.
The current corridor specialist job description does not permit them to do rental inspections. So in that case.
Right.
But then again, I think about relationships and think
They can do premise.
they could do the prem. So they could in theory do it. But then I think of the relationship, the officer who did the rental inspection tries to build with those property owners. That's the other benefit of it, having them assigned to those districts is building it. So with you, whichever way you ultimately decide, if I'm to offer any advice, my preference is flexibility, and I will certainly then assign that position to a corridor or multiple corridors.
Right.
In the long term could offer more flexibility.
Okay.
Great.
So
Any other proposals or suggestions for budget considerations?
just had a quick question and with what you asked for from code,
Yes.
if we could also get Raleigh, if there's any way to, maybe you can talk to your staff when, to get this. When our premise inspectors go out, do they just take care of that one property and then leave? Or do they look about them of all the train wreck all around them?
It depends on, like, it depends on the job or the day of the week. Like if, for example, if they're going out to do, follow up on a Lansing Connect complaint, they'll budget that half hour or however long they think to go do that. They may have a pending re-inspection then when that hour is over that they have to get to. So I know where you're getting at and we see it quite often. So they go and do that Lansing Connect, turn to the right, see another issue. But if they have a re-inspect, they're supposed to be meeting somebody at, they'll likely either note that, hopefully come back when they can, or somehow, but they've got to go into their re-inspect. So it's tricky some days depending on their schedule.
And what, do you know what the turnaround is on the Lansing Connect app when people put in submissions for commercial corridor issues?
It depends on the actual violation, but they're supposed to get assigned within 24 hours of receiving the complaint, with the exception of like a Saturday. 24 hours wouldn't be, and then until Monday. It's supposed to be assigned. In terms of compliance, though, again, most of the corridor issues are going to be written up under our zoning. So that's going to be that initial 14-day letter, another 14-day letter. So we're looking at least a month before, with no extensions or no communication from the owner, before we're at a moment where we could write the ticket. Once we write the ticket, we're then at the mercy of the court for scheduling that first appearance.
Right. Yeah, because I just looked at my Lansing Connect and my requests on Michigan Avenue are,
Have they been assigned to your knowledge?
well, they've been closed. They're over 120 days old. And this, for example, the hot tub place
Yep.
on Magnolia in Michigan, which I've emailed you about.
Yep.
Has some pretty nasty graffiti on it.
Sure.
They're doing something on the inside, but that hasn't changed. So that's the frustration because we don't see stuff happening. There's another store further down. I think there was 15 storefronts. There's signs falling down. 1703 East Michigan, which was a Oprah that we approved that nothing's happening with now a couple years back.
Mhm.
The building's falling apart. The sign is messed up. I get frustrated because we're trying to get these things done and those were old requests and I typically wouldn't press on that kind of thing, but I'm looking at this going 90 days back, there's nothing there.
Sure.
So they're old requests and nothing has changed. And it's frustrating because Michigan Avenue is being completely redone. There's a huge opportunity here. And I think there's an opportunity on South MLK right now too with, you have new food places going in, you've got this bowling alley coming down. This could be a renaissance for the city, theoretically.
That'll come down.
Cross our fingers.
Well, we can all hope for miracles.
On the Lansing Connect app issue, and I know we're kind of straying here off the topic, but it's my understanding there was, I don't want to call it a defect, but the way the system was built is that you put in your request to Lansing Connect. There was a mechanism in which when the employee selected or took an action, that the person who submitted that action would have a notification that was auto-generated that said this is closed. When it didn't mean closed as in it had been, fully taken care of. But it had been received, recorded, and then was going on to those next steps. So I'm wondering, is that still causing confusion that you know of? I know it's been some months since I've asked about that.
I don't know that level. I would have to reach out. I can ask IT for you on that one.
Okay, do you have
I do.
any?
So what
feedback?
was happening is they were closing them, pulling them off of the Lansing Connect system and putting them into their own work order system,
Right, so,
which
right,
gave the appearance that this issue was taken care of.
Sure.
When in fact it wasn't. Now, I don't know if your department operated like that. That was public service and a
Correct,
couple other
yeah.
departments. Essentially, they were closing it and it's like, oh, it's been done.
like pothole repair, for instance, right? Like, yeah. And-
So, and I think that that has been clarified. There was another issue with Lansing Connect, since we're talking about it, the public can hear. They rectified a lot of that old stuff, like street lighting that we don't do through that anymore. They
Sure.
cleared all of that out. If something's been fixed and closed, they've cleared that out. There was a ton of backlog stuff I had open from 2-3 years ago, that has been since rectified and cleared out now.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know if it was the same type of issue, we're talking about, some months and then it's not rectified, but maybe you've received a notice that it is. And so I was just curious if that was still causing confusion.
So when you say it's been clarified, does that mean it's been clarified with respective departments that they are not to close it out in Lansing Connect
That was my
until it's
understanding.
action? Because really what it should, I mean, if we're talking about
Yeah.
communication with the stakeholders, it should say in progress.
Yeah.
Period, until it's done.
Yeah.
Because what it communicates to them is it's closed, they go by, they get angry, totally understand, and then they don't know what the next step is. Are they supposed to
Yeah.
resubmit? Are they,
And I'll
So,
double confirm, but it was
Yeah,
my
that's fine.
understanding that that was the process now, was in process
okay.
or received.
Alright.
Okay. Great.
And I think it's important. The only reason why I think it's incredibly important, for the folks at the table, is every time we go to any department or we go to the mayor, or we go anybody to get anything done, because folks, they have a kind of a reasonable expectation that we can actually get stuff done as council members. We're told, well, did you put Lansing Connect? Well, yeah, and so did they. And unfortunately, what it's communicating is clear as mud. You know what I mean? So
I encountered 2,500 open Lansing Connects when I came into the department.
I'm not surprised.
And only 2,000 of them were me.
Or at least 1,500. I have at least 500.
Just one quick other thing. I
Yeah,
want to
absolutely.
compliment your department, your staff. They, out of all the departments, they do comment.
Sure.
They do respond to comments.
Yes. Good team.
And I appreciate that we're hearing some feedback. Unfortunately, on those commercial ones, I didn't get feedback.
I'll check it
But the other ones, we always get feedback on. In fact, I've had some where they put in who, like, the premise person is and.
Are they putting
down
their name and number?
Yeah, which is great because they don't know who I am.
Sure.
They do it anonymously.
Yeah.
I know who I am because Google Maps it.
Sure.
But it's good for citizens to get that feedback. That's the important part.
I agree.
So sorry, it's totally side railed.
Don't be sorry.
And then-
This is all important for us to discuss
If we
publicly.
go-
This is great.
Speed bumps.
Yeah, if we go back to this, the speed bump. So
Sure.
we have 3 that they installed on Clemens and they're
Correct.
testing the speed right now. They've got lines running across. There certainly is a slowdown. I've talked to the neighbors. No traffic backups that have caused real issues. People just slowed down. I mean,
Yeah, I go over that road several times per month, I'll say, and it works for me. And I've seen the traffic calming that it has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so I think, because the issue will be before the snow flies, they have to pull those up. And there's a lot of work involved in that. So I think that the ask, maybe instead of the portable speed bumps, we now have those and can deploy them to other parts of the city. Perhaps the ask could be, I know that the increase, that if we're looking at this from the mayor, they did include money for permanent speed bumps to bump that number up.
What page is that on?
The permanent speed bumps were on, I think it was in the infrastructure portion of it at the beginning. 100.
There's capital.
I know it's here somewhere.
So we have the 50,000 in there for the temporary. See the,
We had a discussion about it, the mayor.
is it just street calming? Is that what they're called?
I just see the,
It could be,
temporary, well,
it could be, and if memory serves me, the 10 million in local street repair, I think that it's included in that money. I think it was verbal that the mayor mentioned this at council when he presented this, and then we've had discussions on it. But I guess my ask would be, the speed bumps are clearly working. I would say that maybe one of our budget priorities could be permanent speed bump in the amount of $500,000 in funding. I get calls all the time. I have a call in right now for Northtown neighborhood. And that could be a raised, crosswalk. It could be a number of things.
Do we know what the cost of an installation of one speed bump is?
I don't, but
yeah, that was my question. And then also and I know we certainly don't operationalize these items, but
Right.
just the way this has gone, we've deployed the portable speed bumps. We've seen their effectiveness. And now the request is to put in permanent speed bumps or a raised crosswalk or something to that effect to continue that traffic calming. You envision this as how we would move forward in the future, saying like we've seen these effective in specific areas and now we're requesting
yes.
permanent speed bumps in those locations.
Yes, and in fact, I had a conversation with the public service director earlier today about potentially locating speed bumps. And I think one of the issues that we're gonna struggle with is he had mentioned data from 20 years ago. That data is no good anymore with less police officers to enforce the speeds. And I think everybody's well aware of COVID driving. I'm gonna just start naming it COVID driving. People are recklessly driving out there
Yeah,
on a regular basis.
in the neighborhoods. And so I'm not,
I hear
no
it on my-
pushback on speed bumps on our neighborhood roads, for a variety of reasons, including the high speeds.
And this would be on non-major roads. So
Sure.
this would be your local Indiana Street that's not a main thoroughfare.
Mhm.
But we did get Clemens, the speed bumps, and that is considered a main road. Because Moores River Drive is also a main road and they have speed bumps. So there is some latitude when it comes to those main roads. The major roads and obviously the state roads, we'd have no say in that. But I think the major complaint, obviously, we know our corridors are speed drag strips, but I think the neighborhoods have really become like, I don't know how people are getting to the speeds they're getting to. And we've got kids, dogs, senior citizens, me trying to cross the street.
I think the question becomes, because what I'm hearing is, you had proposed like a dollar amount where you're saying is maybe little less specificity
Sure.
as, maybe it's, permanent speed bumps based on the success of the portable speed bumps or whatever. Yeah, I'm fine with either.
We could take the money amount out
Yeah.
and just do.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I haven't done a budget recommendation without a dollar amount tied to it, so
Well,
that's
Here's one right here.
recommending, okay, perfect.
So perhaps change the portable speed bumps to permanent speed bumps and just leave it like that.
I am good with that.
And then did we agree on striking two?
To,
I mean, it's either strike it or it's continue funding for. I mean, if we think it's in jeopardy, and I haven't had any, well.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, it has value. To me, there's been some vacillation in terms of sport in the past. I wouldn't have an issue just changing that, continue funding for that.
I like that.
Ship internship program.
I do think that is important, so continue.
Continue funding, yeah.
Any new items that?
I think we have to, yes, I think we have to continue to reinforce our ask as a council with the resolution that we put forth earlier in the year with regards to additional firefighters and additional police officers up until we get to optimal staffing levels. And in that resolution, it called for adding 3 to 6
Correct.
per fiscal year until we got to the optimal level. And obviously, there's supposed to be a study done by the administration. We were asking for a study done, doesn't bind them. But so I would say that I think we should put to the hiring of, or I should say, funding for at least 3 of each. This gets us to that on that floor.
So funding for 3 to 6, police and fire.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
So that could be number 3, because it sounds like the zoning personnel staff administrative tasks is not something that they're interested in doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Riley, I know you're in the room still. Not,
Interested, just maybe different way.
I know. Well,
I would love 3 to 6 until we're optimal 2s.
So you're.
look, can I,
One code officer for every 3,000 parcels.
Are we removing
Sure.
3? Or is that what we're,
So, well, we're
I don't know.
discussing
I
it.
have a question on 3.
Sure.
Okay, so you open the door. Let's do this. What about an ask for? No, I busted the door open. So temporary help to catch up on the caseload.
Sure.
I mean, would that help if we brought in, I hate to use this word, but ringers? I know you guys are, look, I talk to landlords, we all know we're way behind. There's a lot of workload. I get it. And our staff is working their butts off, great staff. Temporary help, would that help your team to be able to catch up to a good place where we can be proactive?
The concern I would have with temporary help for this specific activity is that the folks doing it now are required to have 2 certifications through the International Property Maintenance Code. And so I'm not certain what temporary help would look like that has either that designation already or something of similar effect.
I would imagine there might be people that have retired from different cities
Perhaps,
that have that, or even our own department that they've retired.
perhaps. Certainly I would have to explore that a little bit more, certainly talk with HR of the union on that one. To see if that audience exists for the code enforcement world. If not, and again, I think just in general, as the city grows and as development grows, certainly we're going to need to see, I mean, I wasn't lying, if you do 50,000 or so parcels divided by the folks who are doing enforcement, and that includes the commercial corridor specialists, it's about 3,300 parcels per person. And so granted, not every parcel needs enforcement. So definitely think there's need for more help, but
What about
can we stop just there? Sorry. Okay, so here's, so you're going to make your budget request to the administration, right? Sometimes those conflict with, some of our requests or maybe what they want to see done up on the 9th floor. And then sometimes, right, you're just reinforcing or we're just reinforcing. So why don't we just ask you,
yes,
what do you need? You've heard all of the concerns that we have, that our constituents have. You've talked a number of times about needing more help. Specifically, if we could put, a request for a position or 2,
sure.
what would that be?
Sure. For this, it would be continual, an additional code officer or an additional 2 or so. I haven't thought of doing a study, perhaps like maybe others in the administration are talking about for police and fire. That's a note to myself to follow up on that, to see if that same effort I could be doing on my end for the work we do to help formalize where that growth is going to. But I can tell you comfortably today that I intend to make an additional budget ask for at minimum 2 positions for thing code enforcement.
So 2 additional code officers. And then let me ask you this. How many people do you have doing paperwork? Like their paperwork? Do you
Like
have
their-
staff doing that?
Clerical staff we're good on. And so there's 5 clerical staff that support the code enforcement team.
Good.
Additional 2 code enforcement officers.
And what about your
I'm
tech?
good with that.
Do you have the technology to be able to speed this up? Like, I keep talking about tablets,
Yep.
where it literally could do
Yep. I remember talking about that in
automated.
our ride along. Our building safety team's already using that. We've deployed that across their division. It's a lot easier because they're an enterprise fund and they have an excess amount of dollars. So the budget asked there was more simpler. We'd like to do that as well. So that will, granted, my budget doesn't go into the mayor certainly till the end of year. So I haven't fully vetted these out, but yes, we intend to make a technology increased ask so that all code officers can either have an iPad similar or some sort of modified laptop. Now they have the ability to have laptops now in the field, and that's helpful. But the thing we like about the iPads is when they're doing inspections, they can take the picture and it automatically gets loaded into the parcel file versus the digital camera model that code is doing. So I intend to make a tech ask. I don't have a dollar amount for you specifically, but if you're writing budget priorities without dollar amounts, I would support that as well.
Perhaps the question could be additional 2 enforcement officers and then another ask of
For the,
increased funding for technology
In the field technology.
in the field
I like that.
technology.
Good.
I like, yeah, I agree with that.
Like that.
It's like Raleigh's Christmas list.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we have a pretty strong list going here that really is building upon what has been requested before.
Can you just read back what we have so far?
Sure. So the original, this is what we had previously, the portable speed bumps. We're talking about having permanent speed bumps placed in areas where portable speed bumps have proven effective. Continuing or sustaining the LFD apprenticeship / intern program. The addition of at least two additional code officers, coder enforcement, I'm sorry.
Code enforcement officers.
Code enforcement officers. With additional funding for in the field technology. And those are the 3 items I have. The remaining item on our list that was provided for us was the redevelopment non-motorized plan to focus on.
Did you have the
pedestrian
LPD and LFD personnel?
The additional
there?
fire and police
Did you say,
officers.
okay, you said it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And that's to keep it in step with the resolution that we
Yes.
passed earlier
Yep.
this year.
Perfect. Okay.
Exactly.
So I have 5 items, right? Plus, are we gonna keep 4? Non-motorized, is that even in here from, I can't remember. It's included in the budget this year.
Realizing that you were part of this committee last year, right?
Yes,
What
I
was what was utilizing the $100,000 redevelopment non-motorized plan to focus on pedestrian safety?
Well, there's a non-motor, they're having community discussions on a
Right.
non-motorized plan currently. And I guess I'm not certain if that is,
I guess I just don't understand the 100,000.
yeah.
I
incorporated.
understand using the non-motorized plan to
Perhaps.
spend money on pedestrian safety.
Perhaps we pull it down then until they're done with their community discussions.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that leaves us with 5 at my count, correct?
We have,
That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes.
Perfect.
yep, I got 5.
All right.
I just want to say I appreciate that we actually beat these up. Because I've sat in committees where we just kind of go with what we had the year before.
Right.
And it's good to be able to talk about this and beat these up and change them up a little bit.
Absolutely. All right.
And you even have one more meeting.
Yeah, I was going to say, we do have one more meeting prior to our a deadline that we need to meet. So if there are additional items or additional comments on what we've discussed here today, we can certainly keep this topic on our next meeting agenda and sort of vet that through one last time if we'd like.
Cool.
All right. If there's no further comments or questions, are we comfortable with moving on to item C?
I am.
Yeah,
Yep.
good.
Good, okay. The 30 oldest neat properties, and we have that list that have been printed for us and provided in our packets. I don't know how much time this committee has had to review. I did a quick skim, but admittedly did not have time to dig in on some of a lot of these actually. Does our committee have any comments or questions on the addresses that have been provided today? Councilmember Cost?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were raising your.
Well, no, I always have questions. Raleigh, was 1115 Regent Street the one we discharged?
Because of the,
It was Casey's Inspections that bought it for he was gonna retire in the house.
sounds familiar. I'm also got in the one you discharged due to the owner being in the hospital. I don't think it was this one, but
Okay, that owner in the hospital was Prospect.
I can look back. Regardless, I mean, you'll see our note, and I guess
It didn't show up.
it didn't show up for our 6:30, so we're gonna work to get a search warrant request to get inside the home.
And I see some of the make safer demolishes have been cleared off the red tag list.
They've been cleared. Apologize. It looks like Kane Ortho and Cedar on that tree. We didn't put the date the tags was lifted, but those tags, those would be two examples where the owner has, and their development team has successfully made it safe. There still are two on this list that are moving forward to demo. So that's the one on first page, and then there's one on the second page. They're highlighted in yellow. So those are, I'm expecting to purchasing to put those bids up this month. There will be a couple other MSDs that are 30 oldest, like the MLK property and so forth, that'll be in that bid packet as well.
I do have a question for the committee on this list. Earlier this year, we went through a few meetings where we were receiving the list, either not getting to it because our agenda was so heavy or a lot of questions at one point with this particular type of list, the 30 oldest neat properties. And we have heard in the past that sometimes, properties will sort of jump some of these in line depending on how severe that property has become. So my question for the committee, I had asked for Director Van Fossen to provide these quarterly. So a few questions. Is quarterly often enough in your opinion? And the second question is, do the 30 oldest neat properties address the questions we may have? Or do we want to know, maybe the top 20 most urgent properties that would be on a list like this? Do you have any input or insight on how you'd like to receive this information?
Guess that doesn't have to be subjective. Are you talking estimated cost of repairs versus SUV? Are you talking, how would you determine what's the most urgent? What I would like
Right.
to see,
I guess that's my question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is our priority still to look at the oldest?
I think it
ones on
can
the
be, but I
list?
think we can
Okay.
also ensure, which maybe we have been to some extent, but there's 11 where the red tags have been removed, right? So let's push everything up.
Yeah.
And
Correct. And
Okay.
we should be doing, like, I think if you go to page 3, there's actually 9 on this.
Oh, okay.
So our,
You are,
might
okay, perfect.
not be to the exact one for one, but we
Right.
are furthering down the list as tags are removed for your quarterly report, with the assumption that that's where the base for my understanding of the basis of this request was recognized. There are others that may be more important
Right.
tag yesterday, but we want to see progress on the oldest regardless.
Mhm.
So our hope is as tags come off, we just go to that 31st, 32nd, 33rd.
Got it.
Sure.
Okay.
Then sorry,
Please.
the property that is north of Willow, in the neighborhood behind Handy's Market.
Okay.
Has that been torn down yet? It was the one that was sent out to bid last summer,
Do you remember the address?
something North Walnut.
There's one on North Jennison, the North 1340.
That was one of them.
That was one, the 1342 North Walnut. That's big, if that's the one you're talking about, which might be just north of Willow. 6 North Jennison is north of Willow. That's going to be bid out this month, along with the 1232.
Can't be that one. We did a bid last year on it. We had we had discussed that, like, how come it wasn't torn down?
Right, 1326 Jennison, we had the old bid that we then learned of and took up and confirmed the purchasing is still active enough to use. So that one did in the calendar year.
That would have been, it is 13, it's 1342. That was made safe for demolish almost 2 years ago.
Correct. And so we made a decision to not use that bid anymore after arguing with purchase. The one on Jennison was good enough still to use. The one on Walnut was not. And then Allen county treasurer took possession of it. And so we went back and forth with them on some of the recent state law changes there. But then ultimately agreed that we are still in the rights to demo. So we're going to get a new bid this time. If we're talking the same one.
it just, and I understand what you're saying. I have concerns with how the state law is written that we just sat on this for 2 years. I think Carol was here when we made Safer demolish this property. So it might have been 3 years.
Sure.
And I went past it the other day. I was very frustrated it was still standing because we had a conversation about, getting this demolished. And it looks terrible.
I don't disagree. I can tell you from my end, we're certainly trying. I do remember an effort by the county to approach this committee because they are under a different belief that it shouldn't be torn down. Appreciate the feedback you were able to give them to say not happening. So we're still proceeding at this point.
I do have a question on some of the notes where it says the administrative search warrant is the next step.
Yep.
So the owner did not show, and I'm specifically looking, there are several of these notes, but let's say 3611 Homewood, bottom of page 2. Owner did not show 6/30/25 for the inspection request.
Sure.
Administrative search warrant will be next step. So has that been requested? How long does it take to request an administrative warrant? And what is the
It's a tricky
timeline there?
question. Certainly it depends on what else, this is, and to your point earlier, it depends what else is going on that day in terms of the officer assigned to that area and what else. And so assuming the officer has nothing else to do, no other competing priorities, in theory, they should be able to submit an administrative search request to the city attorney's office for review within a week. That gives them time to get any updated photos, compile all evidence. Search warrant requests are now having to be, we have them go through both one of the other leads, whichever is your supervisor, they sign off it, then goes to the city attorney's office. And then after their approval, we wait to get on the magistrate schedule. Usually that's a week on our end to get it in, and usually the magistrate schedule is pretty good about a week after, sometime between that we get it. Once we get it, we have generally guidance is about 7 working days to execute that order. If the inspection happened on June 30th and we haven't, without going to that specific address, talking to that officer and their supervisor, all I can say today is I'm assuming other priorities unfortunately took priority because of that. But in talking with the 2 supervisors who helped prepare this report, it's certainly back on the list of we need to get back into those homes to continue the compliance path.
Is there, I mean, and this somewhat relates to the conversation we just had about staffing levels and things like that. And
All code officer and all premise officer positions are filled and started.
yeah, and I understand like competing priorities, right? That make.
Can you say that just one more time? What did you just say?
All code officer and premise officer positions have been filled.
Okay.
Okay,
2 weeks ago, the last premise officer started.
as of 2 weeks ago, meaning you're
We have about
still,
6 officers still who have started training within the last month.
okay, so they will be brought up to speed. So my hope is that, some of these competing priorities will be handled by this
Yes.
staff who's being trained currently.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That gets to the heart of
Absolutely.
what I was going to ask. Okay, any other questions from committee members or comments on any of these properties that we see here or the notes?
So did we
associated
answer
with
your
them?
question? I don't know.
Yes.
Did we? Okay, so we're gonna do what moving forward?
Oh, I'm sorry, with the list. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I thought you meant the
No.
last question. No, if the desire is to address the oldest 30 properties, good with that. I just wanted to make sure I'm touching base with committee members and see if we're receiving what we need from this. So,
Okay, cool.
Quarterly, and then as I remove tags, we'll just keep. Perfect.
great.
Question.
Mhm.
1612 Martin Street.
Not on this list.
No, it's not. And that's okay. I just want to know if we're going to demo.
Sure. Absolutely. It's haunted all of you more than it has me. I wasn't here, but now I'm here. It's also one of those that haunts me. So I will talk about that one, but I want to give Metro Bull as well, because I know it was mentioned.
Mhm.
Metro Bull, I talked with Dick Peffley last week, Smiliana in his office. The owner has been waiting for the disconnect. It's a little bit different disconnect than the residential ones that appreciate council member Costa's been able to help get that scheduled because it's a bigger pipe, different crew. I don't know, but I got good feedback from Smiliana yesterday that they've made, and the owner confirmed that BWL reached out to him. So I'm just waiting for a scheduled date. At this point, he is ready. Hubble Construction has submitted their permit. We're ready to issue it as soon as BWL disconnects it. So took your advice with the other property you did and went all the way to Dick with this one so that he understands the urgency and importance of that. So I'm optimistic that we are getting close to the finish line, but also don't take my word until the actual demolition has started on that.
Call Dick as soon as I leave the room because
Yeah,
I have a constituent contact meeting Saturday.
even better.
We're at La Mulata, and I can guarantee that every single person that drives by that is going to say, why the hell is that thing still standing?
I'm comfortable.
Okay, perfect.
I'm comfortable sharing with you as well if it comes up that we're only granting temporary parking for the current utility staging that's
Right.
there, which is expected to be done at the end of the calendar year. No additional temporary parking will be granted.
Do you know if, and I've asked you this before, but since you met with Dick, did you bring up the topic of how much money he's getting and perhaps how we could capture that?
I did not, and I only didn't because it's ultimately a vendor of theirs who is doing that's not BWL direct.
Oh, it's
And so
free.
I don't know what the vendor and the current owner, what agreement they have in terms of that relationship, but
More than I make in a month.
1612 Martin.
Oh, 8,000.
1612 Martin, back up one more, 1033 Shepherd was torn down. I believe they finished everything yesterday. 1612 Martin is the same contractor. One of the issues, as I'm learning, is these utility disconnects are a bottleneck. BWL has been helpful both on the Shepherd and Martin one. We have a contact there. We've got some control there. That's easy. Consumers is a different beast. Martin Street was delayed because of the fence, and consumers, I'm learning, doesn't do a lot of outreach back to us, like, hey, just call and tell me when you're coming because we'll move the fence. We've gated it. That's been since cleared up. Our contractor moved some debris out of their way, and so we are waiting for consumers. I've escalated on my end. I appreciate the mayor wanting and willing to get involved with his contacts at consumers. And so at this point, the contractor's ready to mobilize. On Friday, I got an update from consumers that they've escalated it, so I'm waiting for that escalation report. As soon as that gas disconnect goes, our folks are ready. They have their equipment in Lansing because they're not taking it out because it's here for the Shepherd demo. And then they're doing a land bank. They've got 5 land bank demos. Allen is one of those, and they're the same guy. So we're optimistic the contractor, as soon as consumers, that they'll address it this month. Just waiting now for that game. Still not giving you the official date like you want. I also want that. But we're learning with these MSDs, we're going to try a different strategy next time when we are at this point, where instead of having our contractor just do the normal, submit those disconnects to the utility provider and wait, what we're learning, 8 weeks at minimum, that we're just going to use our points of contact and go right to the top and try to use and abuse that privilege.
The gas line is not live, right?
The gas line is not. It would have been shut off at the night the tree fell. It's that though they come and actually do the full disconnect. So they're removing all the piping from the right of way to where the meter would have been at the house.
So some tree fell in the house and they'll come right out, take care of the problem.
We try.
I mean, stretching the truth. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right, anything else? Okay, all right, at 4:48, we are adjourned. Thank you.
You gotta go back to school? Wow, I
Because
knew
it's week
that.
first,
I
we have
sit
to-
next to you.
you know, we
Some of the
haven't-
stuff you know.